The wind carried the scent of burnt offerings. The night scholar, Liang Wei, lost his name. Not the clean, ceremonial kind. This was the stench of something older, deeper. The kind of burning that happens when memory turns to smoke, and the soul forgets its own shape. The trees whispered in a language just beyond human hearing, their branches clawing at a sky so low it pressed against the earth like a lover's suffocating embrace. Liang's scrolls, damp with the forest's breath, clung to his arms like dying moths. His boots sank into the soil, each step a muffled protest against the silence. Then the scream, not human, not quite. A sound like a blade dragged across ice, a fox's cry sharp enough to split the world open. He followed, of course, he followed. Men like Liang Wei were born to follow into libraries, into debates, into the warm, wine-soaked embrace of scholarly obsession. But this was different. This was the kind of following that happens in the space between heartbeats, when the body moves before the mind can protest. The trees parted like a theater curtain, revealing a clearing that shouldn't exist. The air there was thick, syrupy, as if time itself had slowed to a crawl. And the cage, God's the cage. Not iron, not bamboo. Bones, human bones, fitted together with the precision of a calligrapher's stroke, lashed with sinew that glistened wetly in the moonlight. Inside, a creature that was neither girl nor fox, but something caught between her fur, the color of a bruise ripening under skin, her eyes wide and unblinking. She didn't cower, she didn't snarl. She watched. Beside her, the hunter. A man with a bow slung across his back and a smile like a rusted hinge. "Pretty, isn't she?" he said, tapping the cage. The bones hummed in response. "Got her chewing on my brother's spine." Little thief Liang should have turned away. Instead, his fingers found the latch. Cold metal bit into his skin. The cage exhaled a sigh. A hiss, a breath that smelled of crushed chrysanthemums and rotting parchment. Then darkness, warmth, a dream of falling. He woke in a house that smelled of honey and grief. Wooden beams arched overhead like the ribs of some great beast. Lanterns flickered, their light the color of old amber, casting shadows that moved just a half-second to slow. The air was thick with the scent of braised pork, scallions, ginger, his mother's recipe, the one she made before the fever took her. His robes were clean, softer than he remembered, as if someone had washed them in moonlight. "Husband." The voice was silk unraveling. She stood in the doorway, human-shaped now, almost. Her hair was a heavy braid, black as a starless night. Her mouth curved into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. In her hands, a tray. Steam curled from the bowl, carrying the scent of nostalgia. He looked down. A ring coiled around his finger, tight as a noose, not metal, not stone. Hair braided, knotted, still warm. "You're pale," she murmured, brushing his cheek. Her fingers were cold. "Sit, eat. I made your favorite." He didn't remember marrying. He didn't remember her. But the pork melted on his tongue, rich and tender, the exact texture of his childhood. The wine tasted like the summer he turned 13, when the plum tree in the courtyard sagged with fruit and his father still laughed. "You don't remember killing the pig?" she asked, tilting her head. He choked. She laughed, a sound like a needle slipping between ribs. "You'll feel better after," she promised, feeding him another bite. That night, he dreamed of cages, silver needles sliding into soft tissue, red ribbons winding around his wrists, a loom in the corner of the room, its shuttle moving on its own, weaving something that shimmered like wet silk. He woke, gasping, the scent of fox fur thick in his lungs. She was there, stroking his forehead. "It's just the past bleeding out," she whispered. "Let me help." By the third night, he noticed the vials. Jade, smooth as bone, tucked beneath the bed. Each one stoppered with wax, each holding a single drop of blood. His blood. The dates on the labels were wrong, some from last week, some from tomorrow. When he asked, she smiled, her teeth glinting in the lamplight. "I pluck the sadness before it spoils," she said. You don't need to carry what cuts you. He should have run, but the food tasted like home. And her voice held a lullaby. He almost remembered one that wasn't his. On the full moon, he pretended to sleep. She came like smoke, barefoot, silent, her white robes whispering against the floor. A needle glinted in her hand, thin as a spider's thread. She pressed it to his temple. Today's sorrow is tomorrow's silk, she murmured, a tug, a pull. Something inside him unraveled. When she left, he opened his eyes and cried. No tears came. The scholar woke in bones, not his bones. Ribs cracked and curved around him, pressing closer with each breath. The cage pulsed, alive, hungry. Through the bars, he saw her. Not just my now, but 100 faces layered like ink on parchment, by Liang Wei, names that rustled like dried leaves. She walked the forest path with another man, another scholar. Young, curious, he reached for the latch. The loop began again. You think this is just a story, but you've seen her. In the woods at dusk, her braids swinging like a pendulum. By the river, washing something red from her hands. In your dreams, humming a lullaby you swear you've never heard. She told you the meat was fresh. She said, let me take your pain. She never lied. You let her. You always do. The scholar slammed his fist against the bars. Let me out, he snarled. The cage rattled, but he felt no release. She wasn't real. This wasn't real. So why did his blood sing when she approached? Why did his gaze drift to her, even though he hated her? Why did he feel his skin prickle with need instead of revulsion? Because, a voice whispered in his ear, she is the contract. It was written in your marrow long before you met her. Signed the first time you loved something you forgot. She'd come to him in his hour of greatest need, a whisper in the dark, a touch on his arm. At first, he hadn't seen her face, only the flash of white teeth as she smiled. Then she'd turned in the firelight, and he'd seen enough. Silk clinging to bone, eyes like polished amber. Later, he learned there were others, servants missing from their village, fishermen lost at sea, scholars vanished from their mountain retreats, all taken by her, all bound to her, all given over to the weaver. There are rules, she never lies. The ring is real, the sorrow returns, sharper if you resist. The ribbon shifts color when she's nearly done. You never reach the end. She was spinning now, threads of moonlight and memory stretching between them. His memories, her memories, shared memories, shared memories. With every turn, he remembered falling, remembered how much it hurt. How could she make it hurt so much? That was her art. She wove sorrow into silk and sold it by the bolt. And then she'd taken his finger. A foxglove fell from her sleeve, brushing his skin. He flinched. She leaned close, her lips like winter on his neck. He tasted snow and blood. The hunter became the fox. That was her art. She turned men into beasts and set them free. Or trapped them forever. Which would he be? He closed his eyes, willing her away. When he opened them, the cave was gone. He was in his study, sunlight slanting through the window. On his desk sat an open book, a quill, and a ring. Hair braided into it, warm. He stared at it. What was this place? Who was she? Fragments of memories pricked at him, threatening to bloom. Her hand in his, cold. Her eyes on his, hungry. Her lips on his, silk and ash. He pushed the memories down, shoved the ring away. The ache that blossomed there was not sorrow, not quite. It was a hollowed echo of what he'd known, of what he'd lost. And he feared it more than any cage, because she would be back. For the contract was written in his blood, signed with every beat of his heart, sealed with the stolen bloom on his finger. He was bound to her until his breath left him. Until his story ended, she would spin his sorrow into silk. And when he died, she would wear his skin. But first, she would make him an offer. A choice. Be her hunter or her fox. The game would begin again. The chase, the capture, the bargain. The ghost bride beckoned from the lake, her laughter echoing in the reeds. The weaver waited in the den, her loom clicking patiently. As always, the scholar chose neither. He ran back through the forest, his breath sawing in his chest. Back to the house, but the door was gone. In its place, a mirror. He looked in and screamed. Not a man. A fox, fur-matted, tail torn, eyes wide with a terror that didn't belong to a beast. She stood behind him, her reflection wavering. You were cruel once. Different names. You broke girls into silk, sold sorrow by the bolt. I never, you did. Her voice was the wind through dead grass. So I made a vow. She lifted her wrist. A ribbon coiled there, red and white, muscle and bone. Characters stitched in silver thread. Wife, widow, warden. He turned to run. The world dissolved. Only the mirror remained. Only the cage,